Gonna be heating a shock dart, but he's able to makes it
win anything. Sam, defend your team because they haven't won.
Oh my God!
Strap yourselves in, it's another 1 hour episode.
Oh yeah.
Spike defused. I've been farming lost arc drops.
Hello, everybody! It's time for another episode of Press Forward to Defuse while Sam talks about farming Twitch drops out here. We're professionals. We're professionals. Paul's just got a bright shade of pink as he got caught in the chat. I see the blush coming through strong there. All right, it's fading now. He's settling down. But we've got another week, another episode of Press Forward to Defuse where we'll be talking about
myself
Valorant,
turn red again if you want.
Esports,
I mean,
news,
just mention
and
fade and
discussion. No, I don't need that. I don't need that.
Oh, God.
Don't pop a vein on stream. Oh God.
Not this
get
time.
the paramedics on the line.
Ooh, lightheaded.
we got a lot to talk about here. There's a lot going on. Obviously, Masters just finished, so that's very exciting. And we got a ton of roster news as we head into the next round of the VCT because we have no breaks here in the Valorant calendar. So let's go ahead and hop into things. It's our Run It Back section presented by Temple University, where we talk about the news from the last week. And the first one concerns version 1, a team that did very well in the last run of VCT but didn't make it to the big event. They are bringing on Wardell as a temporary stand-in as Whippy gets visa issues sorted. Whippy has apparently had his visa approved, but still needs to get back into the country. I don't know what the circumstances are. Frankly, that all got resolved way quicker than I expected to, considering the fact that I think Whippy's a Russian citizen, and that's pretty tricky to deal with right now. So glad that went well. How do we feel about Wardell as a stand-in here, guys?
It's something to do, right? You know, there was like roster locks and stuff, and then shit happened with TSM, and now he gets to play the game. I did see somewhere at some point that everyone was like, no one is sure what Wardell's plans are going forward. So it is nice that he potentially has the chance to compete, even if just for a little bit. Of course, he's, aside from being a sub for V1, he's essentially out of the season. So there are still a lot of question marks, because as soon as Whippy arrives, Whippy's going to be back in the team. Unless this is like a 10 scenario where like Wardell elevates them so much and they go, you know what, Whippy, we don't need you anymore. We'll see what happens, I guess.
I think it's an interesting one for Wardell as much as it is for version 1, right? Where if he wants to continue competing, which obviously he's weighing being a content creator or doing that kind of thing as well, since he's got a big stream presence and personality, this is an established system that has known track record of success. So if you wanted to up your stock in the competitive ecosystem, get yourself a chance at another roster, like, this is a pretty ideal roster to fill in for, right? You know it works. You know the other pieces work. You know they can make things work. So it's a really good chance to be like, look, here's a functioning system and a good team. I'm going to pop off.
And I mean, it's hard to imagine, right? Like, looking at the teams like listed in the qualifier, that version 1 doesn't make it through one of the rounds of qualification, right? Like, they got to make first or second with Wood. They still have 4/5 of one of the best teams. And then also Wardell, who is not a downgrade in most scenarios. He's coming in on a Sentinel. He's probably just going to be playing the chamber the whole time because, you know, that's what Wardell has been doing these days. I think that'll be fine for version 1, right? So, like, as long as this roster is, you know, qualifies, which it should, at least in one of these 2 weeks, ideally in the first week, I think it's just a good move for everybody involved.
Yep.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, and it's also going to be interesting to see how long he sticks around, since I guess it's just going to be this qualifier, but we'll obviously see as time goes on if there's any more curveballs in it.
But according to Twitter, at least, Wardell is only needed now that Whippy's visa is approved for the qualifiers. So when we get to actual stages, assuming version 1 qualify, which they should, that is when theoretically Wardell would get subbed back out for Whippy. At least that's what I saw on Twitter. So
I wonder how long.
Take that with a grain of salt. I think it was Oh shoot, what's his name? Oh my god, I'm spacing on his name.
Good old,
Not-
what's his name?
Not Giddy's.
Purist?
No, I don't remember.
Bodork?
I don't remember. I'm
Please
so
don't.
Somebody on
Oh my
Twitter.
God.
We'll
Go on
just
then.
cite Twitter.
The guy
as
who
a
runs
source here.
Upcomer.
We're just gonna move on now. We're just gonna move on.
Runs Upcomer?
We'll let you
know,
sort that
runs-
one out in your brain. But we got other things to talk about, so we're gonna move on here
Yes.
and
Good
leave
call.
you behind. TSM announced their signings. We already kind of knew about this. We already talked about this. This is Seven and Guimond
Yeah.
coming into the roster. I think I already expressed my doubts about this roster, in particular the types of signing that these are. To me, they don't really represent a philosophical change in TSM, which to me means that I'm a little bit concerned for how this roster is going to work. But I mean, it's a lot of firepower with Seven and Guimond, and maybe that could be enough. I'm kind of curious to see how it works out. Sam, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, nothing new really. I think that a lot of this is what I've been saying for a few weeks now, but it's just a case of like, we expect these roster moves to happen. A lot of teams have needed them for a while. There's some good talent out there, but the proof is in the pudding. So
Yeah.
until we actually see how they perform, I don't have too many opinions.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen a little bit of how they perform, right? They played with this roster in the Knights Monthly this past weekend, right, while Masters was going on. And they
Good timing.
did really well until the grand finals, where they got sort of clapped by Ghost Gaming. But you know, that's also new Ghost Gaming that's added a proto in. I think Ghost look better than they've ever have. So you know,
yeah.
kind of lands on one side of the scale. It's hard to really quantify two unknown qualities at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Because they both had pretty significant roster changes. So maybe it's Ghost performing way better. Maybe it's TSM performing maybe not as good as they should. Jury's still definitely out.
Yeah, but at the very least, they did what they had to. They beat TSM Academy.
Yeah.
They did
Yeah.
after dropping the first
Dude,
map.
if they hadn't, that would have been so
I think
funny. Oh
TSM
my
Academy just gets their contracts if they beat them in a tournament. I think that's the way it should work. Is
We're
all
now
of TSM
swapping it,
Academy
yes.
just gets promoted, and all of TSM goes down to the Academy.
To be fair, of the Academy teams, like TSM and
It's a
Knights
good
are
one.
actually really scary.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
Like they're actually both really good teams and could easily be, in my opinion, like picked up by a small org elsewhere and still do
Oh.
pretty well.
Speaking of like academy teams, right? So this is a slight tangent, but it's more about like if anybody actually knows,
Us
please let me know.
tangents?
Like, what the hell is going on with Oxygen? They dropped their main team, which was Turkish. They dropped their women's team, which was Turkish. Now the only thing that exists is Oxygen Academy, which is an NA team. They don't have a main team, but
Yeah.
they have an academy team. If somebody can explain what the hell is going on there, that'd be great.
My theory is that they're waiting for Redux to turn 16, and then that's going to become the Oxygen primary team.
that could
Because
be.
Redux is too young to compete in VCT right now. But Oxygen Academy does pretty well in every tournament they play in, but they can't do VCT with their full lineup because Redux is too young. And the kid is insane.
Okay.
The kid is actually cracked out of his mind. So I think that whenever he turns 16, which is sometime next year, they're gonna just sign that. And it's cheaper to have Academy on the logo than anything else when they
Yes.
can't play in VCT.
See, that was what I thought, like
Yeah, keep
they're
those
just
player
doing this to
contracts
pay
cheap.
less. You're just the academy team.
Yep. And
It's a
then they'll
classic.
renegotiate whatever their roster wants to be.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is a lot of
Redux
times
becomes
academy
age.
rosters, and I don't know whether it would apply in this situation since obviously they were in different continents, so you're not really going to do this. But a lot of times academy contracts have specific stipulations for if they become part of the main team, right? Where it's
Right.
like a specific escalator of your salary goes from X to X, or you get X bonus, or blah, 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 blah. No idea if that's relevant in this case, but it's something that could apply. We'll move on, though. We've got some really juicy roster changes to talk about next. NRG making a swap, bringing in Ethan, dropping Android as a result right before the roster lock for this run of VCT. This is a really interesting move. I suspect it came through less because they were upset with Android and much more because Ethan became available and NRG jumped at it. But it does put Android in a rough spot. There was some discourse on Twitter, both from Hayes, who said he felt terrible about doing it at this time, and from Android, who said, I know this is how esports works. Like, it sucks, but this is the name of the game. He's a very veteran player, but still, this is a pretty spicy swap here, Paul. How do you feel about it?
I mean, that tweet hit me hard. As someone who works in
Dude.
esports, not as a player, but as like a cast, that's just esports, nothing new. Oof. hit me right in the chest cavity. It's true though, right? It super sucks for Android, obviously. I think he is definitely still good enough as an individual player to where him not being on any team for VCT locks is really unfortunate, man. Like it really sucks, honestly.
Yeah.
That he's just gonna have to, hit up pugs in tier 2 tourneys for the next 2 months or whatever, until some other team collapses and he tries to finagle his way onto a roster. And Android's a good player too, so I'm wondering how impressive Ethan was when NRG were scrimming and trying him out. Because it's got to be pretty impressive. NRG, despite the fact that I actually, like, going into last VCT, I thought the team was looking really good. They struggled to get actual wins in VCT, right? Like, they would play everybody super close and go, like, 3 maps with almost every team and then flame out and not actually connect with the wins. So, NRG, I think Ethan is potentially a really good upgrade, but it sucks that this is the way it happened.
But I mean, in the same vein, it could very easily have been Ethan in that situation, right? Like if he didn't get picked up by a team. So, I mean, all around it sucks. Also, similar vein, which I've realized we don't actually have in our rundown for today, but this thing just happened to Zoms as well, right? Sentinels have picked up Kempeki.
that's our next thing in the rundown.
Is it? Oh, shit, so it is.
Yeah.
That's my bad.
Read out here, Sam. Literally the next
You know what?
item.
I skimmed.
Amazing.
Okay.
You
But yeah,
see the
it's a
things I
similar
put
thing.
up
And
with.
I have to put up with you, Mike. Come on.
I make the dang outlines. Anyway.
And that is your only redeeming quality.
Wow.
We're going really deep on this, guys. I'm getting a little nervous. He's gone. All right, so anyways, how do you feel?
Moving swiftly along. Mike actually eats it, guys. It's all over. It's GG's.
I mean, do you have anything else to say about this NRG move? I was gonna
about the
move on to
NRG
that.
move?
I was going to play
Not
Mike
really,
for a
to be
second.
honest.
Unlucky.
You haven't had the opportunity yet. You haven't had the trial by
No, I
fire of
haven't.
being the host.
No.
Yeah. Soon, I'm sure.
I
Hey,
make
Mike,
you guys
welcome
do all
back.
the hard work. I just chill.
Just had to walk that one off.
Okay. Fair enough.
Anyway, I do want to stay with NRG for a second, because I do think one of the other interesting things about this edition, right, is that Ethan has ties to the organization. He was part of NRG back in their CS roster, right? He knows the org before that team got sold over towards Evil Geniuses. So I'm kind of wondering who it comes from, right? I'm sure Hayes was very eager to get Ethan on the team. He's a super talented player. Everyone on that roster knows that he's a super talented player, and it is one of those situations where I think they probably just viewed it as a direct upgrade. So
Sure.
yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how they perform. Obviously, for NRG, it's going to be one of those situations where you want to hit the ground running and prove any doubters wrong, because this is the kind of move that, if it doesn't result in immediate success, can sour a fan base a little bit when they're like, we liked Android. He's nice. He does good things. Like, Ethan's going to, even though he's a really experienced player and proven himself many times before, this is one of those roster changes where you're like, you got to prove yourself again. Now let's talk about Sentinels. Sentinels, as Sam really wanted to talk about here, minus Zoms, finally making a change to the core roster. The first change since the last, shall we say, not the motivated change. We got Kempeki coming into this roster. How do we feel about that, Sam?
So I feel like Sentinels have needed a change, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is the change. I mean, Kempeki's a good player, sure, and he's had results. But when I look at the Sentinels roster, I could never look at it and think, okay, that's the thing that needed to change. And it's probably because I'm not, like, intimately involved with the team. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think it was going to be Zoms. I don't know. I'm a little... when I saw it, I was really like... When it first got leaked, and then Sentinels announced it, even when Sentinels themselves announced it, people were like, nah, that's cap. Like, it's not happening. And then, like, Zoms and everybody, like, they kept talking, and everyone's like, nah, it's not happening. It's a lie. Like, I think the whole scene is in disbelief. But I'm definitely very curious to see how it actually works out and how he fits in with the team, and if it does actually elevate them to the point where they need to be, or that they want to return to. Because, like, the Sentinels meta dropped off so long ago, and everybody's just been, like, on that hype train for so long, waiting for them to reclaim their glory, and it just hasn't been happening. So something had to give, but this is definitely a surprise for me.
Paul?
I think the best part about this move was the timing. because it happened like right as Optic lost to Loud in the upper final. So Brazil got 2 wins
Brazil
that
won
day.
twice.
Brazil won twice on that day, which
That
was,
was so
pretty
good.
funny. But in all honesty, I'm actually like, I'm with you, Sam, to a degree. It's hard to be excited about Sentinels just because they haven't been able to get back to that like 2021 Reykjavik peak that we saw from them. But at the same time, when we had MCE on the show, it was a few weeks ago now, he was talking about how Kompaki, like, he keeps like a stat record of like every player and looks through and rates them to his own according. And I mean, MCE is a really smart coach. And he was talking about how Kompaki is really highly listed and how a lot of people were sleeping on this guy. And
basically,
so
he has a model that he uses to talent scout.
Exactly.
And it's spat out. It's highlighted like something like 10 to 20 players over the course of Valorant so far that MC has been using it, and only like 2 of them haven't achieved the level that he expected of them. And Kompeki was one of them, where he thinks that he is now emerging. So, and he wouldn't tell us the other one, but it's a really interesting one, right? Where I think there is a huge potential ceiling for it. I think it is something that in a crew, Kompeki showed up really nicely, and that's not a roster necessarily where you could maximize your talent, because I mean, as we talked about it before, that was a collection of 5 guys who hadn't achieved as much as they'd been hoping for in the past. Now you see Calm. We'll talk about Calm in a second, but now you see Kompeki moving on, and I think this is a really good pickup for Sentinels for a few reasons. I think it really excites me. I think the ceiling for Kompeki is higher than it was for Zalms. I think you kind of know what Zalms was going to be. I don't think he was actively a detriment, but I don't think he was a ceiling pusher in the way that I think Kompeki can be a ceiling pusher for this team. I think that taking another player who's a young, potentially cracked, ceiling raising player, maybe alleviates some of that focus and pressure off of 10s as well. And I think this is potentially very exciting. It certainly gives them momentum and excitement back, as opposed to a roster that was very much stagnating. So it'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch.
My biggest question for this roster now is what are the roles going to become, right? Because Kompeki's not a smokes player.
No,
that's what Zalms was picking up most of the time.
I mean, based on the trailer, right, their introduction, they were using a lot of KO imagery. So looking like Kompeki might be playing a lot of that KO.
So then is Sick falling off of that initiator role, right? And instead going to be shifting on to smokes. I mean, I think that's certainly possible, but how I like when I look at the other 4 players on this team, there's no one I'm like, yeah, they'll play the smokes. Obviously, they're definitely the smokes guy. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see who ends up picking that role up and how much of the roster shifts and how comfortable the players are in their new roles.
Yeah, certainly.
Yes.
Moving on to our next one. Here's the other guy from a crew Stralis, who's entered the world. Calm and Apoth have been added over towards EG. Evil Genius is making another move here as they continue to try and figure out how to make this roster work. I obviously Calm, friend of the show. He's been on the show before. Big fan of Calm. Been that for a long time. Very excited to see him on this roster. I'm less familiar with Apoth. How do we feel about this? Paul, you want to open things up on this one?
Apoth is actually a player I've been casting for a while. I think the first time I casted him was like shortly after Valorant came out. And he's actually pretty cracked. He's actually really good.
Okay.
I think that these 2 pickups are massive for EG. I wish they would have made them a month ago. Right. Instead of like, the week before V. Because this isn't like a lot of our changes.
Scrimming them, right? I know that
scrimming, sure, but like, a lot of the announcements on this show when it's like roster moves, it's like, oh, these guys are officially on the team after playing in this on this team in tourneys for like the last 3 months.
Yeah.
That's not what this is. They just got added this week to the official roster and have just now been playing in actual tournaments with Evil Geniuses. And it's been going somewhat well in comparison. They just they've played like 4 matches that which have all gone pretty well.
Yeah, they're in this week's NSG Open.
I'm just especially, and we can get into this later when we talk more about the NSG Open. I'm nervous about how quickly these 5 players can synergize. Because I think for the first time in EG's history, they actually have a roster that all 5 pieces could actually amount to something pretty decent. I'm just nervous as to whether or not they'll be able to throw that together in a week and a half.
Yeah, I think the fact that there's the caveat of like comparatively better, does that really mean anything, right? I'm sorry. Like, it sounds terrible, but so what? Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to just be, like there's that motivational poster of it's like, you're not trying to be better than everyone else. You're trying to be better than you were yesterday. That doesn't work in esports. You're trying to be better than
That
everyone
doesn't
else.
even work for me. That's
Like,
setting the bar so
seriously.
low.
Like, all right, dude, calm down. Some of us have slightly higher bars. No, but yeah, okay. So comparatively better, it's a start. But hopefully that things can get a little bit better than that as we carry on. As you say, I mean, not a lot of time to synergize and figure out the team and so on. But again, it's nice to see everyone playing in these Mickey Mouse tournaments, as it were, getting the experience that they need. Have you guys seen that meme where it's like the guys walking in through the building and the building's like Mickey Mouse tournament?
Yeah,
and it's
it's
like one of these tier 2 teams that they come out.
It's a meme
Yeah.
that people have lifted from CS, where it used to be a good IGL
sure.
will change your life, where it would
For
be.
sure.
In particular, people did it with Shake Zula, where a lot of the players that are now like top tier Valorant pros. But
Yeah.
people have been using that for a good Mickey Mouse tournament will change your life, and teams that go through the NSGs and the Knights tournaments. I have two observations about this team. Observation one, this is less about the team. Sam, you're a bully. You're such a meanie. Stop bullying Paul and me. Second, I think
Sam's choosing violence.
I
today.
think what's interesting about this team is that while I think there are some exciting pieces of this team, I don't think it's a team where you can just throw them together and expect them to instantly dominate. I think it's going to require
true.
development. It's going
For
to
sure.
require structure. And those are two things that EG's been shit at. Like that, this is now the onus is Calm's probably coming in as the in-game leader, right? Calm has experience leading a roster of unproven
Excuse me.
names in a crew to a higher level. But Calm also had a coach who wound up getting yoinked over towards Sentinels, right? Am I crazy?
Yeah, it was Sentinels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's structure around that. In this team, we still have Potter listed as the head coach. We still have Jimmy Lin listed as the assistant coach. And frankly, none of the teams they put together have been that good so far. So if you haven't made any changes to the support staff, you haven't made any changes to the coaching staff, I think a lot of the onus of developing this team is going to be on Calm. And I think that he's potentially up to the task, but I think that does mean that it'll be interesting to see how this team develops along.
I also yesterday I didn't get a confirmation on this from any of the EG team, obviously.
Okay.
But I was told yesterday that Calm is actually not IGLing.
Really?
I don't know if that's
Okay.
true. That's just what I was told. But that is what I was told when I was casting.
I will ask.
Yeah, Calm. Just ask him.
Yeah. I
We'll
mean,
get that info.
DM
We'll have your
right
insider
now.
scoop soon, guys.
Mike should just become an esports journalist. He's got all the hookups.
And either way, I think that just the timing on this is going to be really rough, because even if the support structure ends up being there, right, and it turns out it was just like old pieces of EG didn't fit properly into what EG wanted for the team or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to get a roster that can be top 8 in the region, right?
Yep.
Like 99%, unless you're the guard. Everybody except the guard. It takes time. And even the guard had 2 months or something before, they actually had to try and qualify for VCT and play through VCT. Like this change comes a week beforehand, and I'm really nervous about that.
Okay, so confirmation from Calm. He's not the primary IGL. He says no, but I do a lot of mid-rounding.
Okay.
I'm asking him about who's primary calling in this roster. But yeah, okay.
was
So
a very
Calm's
quick
I mean,
not
either
the
way,
in-game leader.
Calm adds a really intelligent voice to the team.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's still definitely helpful in elevating their calling.
Yes.
Boostio
Mike
is
is
doing the
still
primary
typing.
calling.
Oh,
Boostio
Boostio
is
for
interesting.
real? That's
I
dope.
did not expect that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
It's
Does
interesting.
it?
We'll have to. I mean, we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes.
Wait,
Shout
hold on.
outs
What does
to
that
Calm.
explain?
We can get into it more later when we talk about the NSG stuff.
Okay.
All
Fair
right,
enough. Fair enough.
interesting. But shout outs to Calm for the quick responses and the information there.
Hell yeah.
He's
Yeah,
the
thank you.
homie.
Big fan.
We'll move on. Speaking of where Calm and Kempeki have been before, we got the new accrue. They had Giovanni as their 5th player, and then I think even more interestingly than that, they've got the new coaching
This
staff,
is so dope.
including
I'm
friend
so
of the
happy.
show, Strong, Mr. Joe.
Woo!
So that's Sala is the head coach. Joe is in fact their assistant coach, but Strong's been on a couple episodes of the pod before as a guest. These are two Brits coming into the coaching staff of a crew. Kind of an interesting pickup here. Sam, you want to talk about them?
I love it. I'm so excited. So for anybody who's ever heard of like Guild, these guys coached the original Guild team when they were still Bonk, right? Way back in the day.
And then they coached Honk.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they coached Honk. And then they coached Yonk.
Yonk.
Kid you not. And then they
Very
became
creative.
Tundra. Yeah, well, it is what it is. And then they got
Tundra
picked
instead
up,
of Tonk? Shameful.
bro. No, Tundra was the org, okay? Tundra picked them up, but that was the new like Bonkar Yassine team got picked up into Tundra, and obviously Sala and Strong have known them for like quite some time, even before like back in the Paladins days, because some of those players, as you may not know, actually originally came over from Paladins. The original Ninjas in Pajama squad was, you know, you've seen in Bonka on the Paladins crew. Anyway, sorry, too much EU stuff. But they've been around the scene for a hell of a long time. And then Tundra, after a lackluster VRL season, VRL, decided that they were getting rid of their roster because, well, they didn't get the rewards that they would have wanted out of the season, which left a lot of people in limbo. So it's really exciting for me to see that these two people, Salah and Strong, coach and manager respectively, are getting the opportunity in a bigger region with a team, well, with an org, I suppose, that's proven itself a few times. Of course, some of those players have just been yoinked recently. But I feel like this is going to be a huge level up for a team that is already on people's lips. People are already talking about a crew and how much they've managed to accomplish. And even though they've lost a lot of their players, they're still kind of there in the back of everyone's mind. So this is a great pickup to just kind of keep them on that upward trajectory.
To me, it's sort of they were a lightning in the bottle team. And now we see whether they can be a sustained build org, right? Because when you're a lightning and bottle team, you get your players poached and they go elsewhere. That Animal Crossing money can't compete with evil geniuses, right? Or Sentinels. So now we'll see what they can do. But I am realizing we're spending way too much time on the news, so we're going to blow through some of these next one. There's one more that I think we have to spend some time on, but then past that, we'll keep moving. So the next bit here is that Dark Zero announced a new team. We'll go quick through this. Really excited to see Drone back on an org. That's my big takeaway from this. Drone was my favorite player to watch of that TSM lineup. He was the first to go, and I have I still don't agree with that, but you know, I'm very excited to see him back competing and curious to see what Drone's going to be able to do. I think we're just going to fly through that one. This next one
pretty much all I had.
Is the next big one here, which is Fnatic are making changes. After Masters, Magnum's off the team, Brave's off the team. Brave, that was pretty predictable given the Russia situation. But Magnum, that is a bit more of a surprise. How do we feel about Fnatic making these changes here?
Do y'all want to hear my inside scoop?
Yeah, what's your inside scoop?
Ooh,
so I had a chat with Anders, who obviously used to coach the Fnatic roster, and he said it makes sense. He actually thought Magnum probably was going to get dropped after champs. The big thing for him is if you go through the information release thing, press release, whatever, they talk about how Boaster is going to take even more of a step back. Which is he's already just done that. So now he thinks that Boaster is going to go into a more passive role. He thinks that they're going to pick up Fearoth, who will take over as IGL. And then you'll have Fearoth on smokes. It seems like there's going to be a huge change up in the entire dynamic of the team off the back of this, which is actually pretty exciting, I think, for a team that's already been doing well, reasonably, do pretty damn well for themselves. And now you kind of bring in a couple more changes. Okay, of course, they struggled in Masters, and we have to bear in mind that they were playing with 2 subs, which sucked, unfortunately. I think they at least get out of groups if they don't have 2 subs. So, but anyway, old wounds. But these changes, I think, will definitely kind of give them the level up that they need to just get even further.
Yeah. Should be exciting. I mean, it's definitely curious, especially considering how much success they've had, and considering the fact that obviously the last event, you can just point to the fact that they're using 2 subs. Now, one of those situations wasn't going to resolve, so you do have to figure out something to do with Brave. But it is still interesting to take this time to sort of radically reshape the way your roster functions. We'll see how it works out. Now we're going to blow through this next bit of news. Anya to Guild X. That's exciting. She was really good with G2 and then got cut pretty quickly. So interesting to see how Anya will be as Guild X. We'll keep moving here. Vitality released their team. That's a bummer, but they also haven't really had any major success. So we'll see if they pick up another team or if they're just kind of donezo.
They're probably donezo for a while.
Probably donezo, yeah.
We'll see what happens with those players. Moving on, there's maybe some changes coming on in here. Riot are apparently toying with having cascading agent select. This is less in our wheelhouse because this has more to do with casual play as opposed to top tier pros. But it's interesting for sure, and we'll see how it changes the dynamic in gameplay. And then obviously there's a big chunky patch. Now this is something we got to talk about. Let's talk about the patch.
Yeah.
Big chunky patch. Fade is in. We'll talk about Fade a little bit later. I want to save that
because Fade's not in for NA qualifiers anyways.
No.
Yeah.
So I'll save Fade for now. But we got some changes going in with the Jet change, obviously. Some changes with
Jet,
Sova and Neon. How are we feeling about the new patch, gang?
Specifically, I think Jet. I think I've seen a lot of people like knee-jerk reacting to the Jet changes. I think she's still fine. You have to be a little bit smarter if you want to try and opt with her, but also everybody's running chamber anyways on most maps, so you just have your chamber op more often than not, which is what a lot of teams were doing anyways. And Jet entry is still fine. This doesn't change your entry ability at all. It just means that you have to actually be coordinated, and at the top level, you should be coordinated anyways. You should be talking about, hey, when are we going in? There should be more than a half second, right? For when your Jet is going in. So I don't think Jet is suffering as much as a lot of people seem to think.
Yeah.
Definitely not. It's not half as bad. I actually like the fact that they're changing this because I want to see a little bit more depth from it. There's something kind of heartbreaking, I suppose, about watching a Jet just take a ridiculously deep angle, get an early pick, like as soon as the barriers drop, tailwind out a dodge, and the entire attacker side is essentially switched off at that point. It's nice to see that she's going to have to play a little bit more with the rest of the team to ensure that she is going to be able to actually get that kind of value if she wants to take those deep angles. There's going to have to be a lot more support. And as you say, entering is going to be fine because like this doesn't affect that in the least. So I love these changes.
Okay, moving on. Scroll, Cody. Scroll. Neon changes. Neon.
Optic are gonna love this change.
Yeah, less likely.
No, they actually really don't like this change.
Okay.
They don't like that they can't kill their
players...
teammates with the wall anymore.
Well, but Optic players have been on. So actually, the wall change is the biggest one here, by quite a bit. For teams like Optic because of how they use the fast lane to get on site. Keep in mind, this is all damage removed from the wall. Yeah, it's not just ally damage, it's all damage removed. So now you're playing up against a KO comp, pop flash through the wall, up, hey, I see your whole team. That's a really nice, tasty lane for me to spray down. It's actually really easy now to like swing the Neon in her own fast lane because it's not punishing at all to do so. So if you set that up properly, it's really easy to counter a Neon now. Well, or at least much easier than it was.
I do find it interesting. Like, I'm sure that you can just remove friendly fire from the wall, surely, because there are some like abilities that don't do team damage. So, like, I don't know. It would be nice to still be able to do damage to an enemy from it, but yeah. I mean, I still laugh at
what does
Victor actually running through the wall and dying?
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Viper's Pit, I guess.
What does what do?
No, I'm trying to think about what doesn't do team damage and Viper's stuff.
Yeah, Viper's Pit doesn't.
Yeah. So
well, the pit doesn't.
Well, because technically none of that deals damage. It does decay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think.
If you can remove team decay, surely you can remove team damage.
I would assume they could.
I'm blanking on somebody.
Especially since the values are different for friendly fire and enemy like damage.
But is there another
I would assume
ability?
they could.
Yeah, I mean...
that does damage that doesn't deal team damage? I
Yeah.
don't think so. I'm pretty sure everything that does damage to the enemy team at least does some damage.
What if
to
it's
your own team.
literally like that? Like we can't figure out how to not break our code this way. That'd be pretty
That would
funny
be
to
pretty
be
funny.
honest.
God,
I
that'd
don't
be
think that's
terrible.
the case, but it would be pretty funny. We'll keep moving on here. Do we have other things we need to talk about? Sova.
Yeah, Sova.
Sova.
Yeah, this is big.
Mhm.
Sova,
This is
drone
big.
nerf. Drone done been nerfed. Shock dart also
Mhm.
done been nerfed. Is this gonna see the Sova in every comp meta change, or is it still just gonna be
Yeah.
Sova in every comp? You
I
think
mean,
it's
it's
No.
more about fade
Goodbye.
than the nerf, but the nerf helps.
Well, I mean, it's both happening at the same time, right?
Exactly.
I think
Dramatic
the
nerf.
owl drone makes sense, right? I think
That's
owl
been a
drone
big
was
issue for a long time.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, I remember when we were talking about, or when Anders was on the show.
Yeah,
like,
he wanted
back
the
in
speed just to be
January,
nerfed like
right?
crazy. Yeah.
Like the speed or the duration, right? This effectively does that. It's interesting that they reduce the amount of pings off of it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like the information you get from an owl drone doesn't last as long,
Mhm.
so it's easier to like reposition as someone who's been pinged by a drone and play that information. I don't know why they did the shock dart change, man. That's wild to me.
Have you
that's
seen-
crazy.
Have you seen the Lothar video though? Like Lothar
No.
actually sees this as an indirect buff. So you
Okay.
have it does less damage on direct, but you're doing damage from Narnia. Like it
Yeah.
still connects. The range is massive and you're still doing quite a bit. So you can like whiff your shock dart and still do a chunk of chip damage. And if you're in like a post plant and somebody's got like I don't know, 12 HP left and you miss your shock dart, you could still do enough damage to kill them. You don't have to get your lineup perfect.
My understanding though is that some of that has been changed. I know that the animation thing was like a big issue, and Riot are changing that. So it does. I think it's not going to affect quite as far from the center of the source. But you're right. It is like a no longer have like peak damage of double shock dart just insta kill, but the average damage is going to be a lot higher.
I'm going to make a prediction here. I bet that in our next major agent bounce patch, aka the nerfing fade patch, there will
Are they
also
finally
be
gonna
a
buff
Sova
Phoenix?
buff. No, I mean maybe, but I bet there's also a Sova buff
Never.
back
I want my
because
boy back.
I bet the shock dart stuff was like, all right, let's sell some fade. Let's sell fade. It's really nerf
I mean,
Sova
yeah.
while we introduce fade, and then we'll just tweak it back. We'll just tweak it back in a month. It's fine. It's fine. It's my conspiracy hat on right now. But we'll move on here. So that's the patch notes as they stand right now. Just don't worry about that. Competitive updates. The other people
Yeah,
can talk
That's just
about
like,
that.
Not really.
slight-
Let's talk
basically
about-
like if you're 5 stacking at high ranks, you get less RR.
Paul cut me off there. Let's talk about Masters. Masters.
Hey,
NA
that
won!
was the thing that happened.
Woo!
Now we get to make fun of Sam for the next 3
NA
months.
best
Fair,
region
fair.
again. EMEA in the mud. Everyone else in the mud. Actually, Asia's pretty happy, and I think Brazil's
Yeah,
probably
Asia's,
pretty
like,
happy
hella
about
happy,
that
man.
too. But EMEA in the mud. Optic on
My-
top.
My biggest takeaway from this entire tournament is in Valorant, there's no such thing as a minor region. We don't
Yeah.
have those.
Just stop calling them minor regions.
Also,
They're
Yep.
lower population regions.
Also-
and that's not
Yeah.
even necessarily true.
That's
'cause
not even
SEA
true,
is
dude.
huge. Yeah, exactly.
also Copium, the guard take. The guard only lost the top 4 teams.
Copium.
So the guard ranked 5th, which is where I had them in my
Technically
power
technically
ranking.
top
I,
3
I
teams.
don't think that's
Technically
how
top
that
3
works.
teams.
No, top 4. They lost
I
to
really
Paper
don't think
X.
that's-
Did they?
Paper X and Optics.
Oh, I was looking at Zeta division. My
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Top 4 teams.
Yep.
Really don't think
Top
that's
4
how that
teams.
works, guys.
Woo!
NT.
Guard
Of
number
course that's how it
5.
works.
Guard number 5 world. Anyway,
I
but,
mean, G2
Hey, you
already
can get
lost
that
the
for
top 4
G2 as
teams.
well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, get fucked.
Now we can all be happy.
don't worry about it. But anyway, let's talk about Optic though, because holy crap,
Yes.
Oli. This was like, it's always been for Optic. They've gotten to that top level and then they haven't gone over that last hurdle. And after they got knocked down by Loud in upper final, there was that thought in your mind where you're like, again, they're gonna come so close and fail to strike it. This time, no, 3-0 in the lower final. 3-0 in the grand final, rocking it through some tough maps, gritting it out, making it happen, and they rock away for the dub. And then look, the least passionate I've ever seen players be while
I
lifting
know.
a trophy.
God, that was so depressing.
Come on, guys. Come on,
After
guys.
2 overtime maps in
Look,
the back
they're
end of
just-
that series,
It's
too.
just personality. Like, legitimately, they're just very reserved people.
Yeah,
like,
they need
oh,
to
yeah.
get some.
FNS Crashy's food, like Victor, as he goes by now, Chet, like they're all very reserved people. It's just who they are. But it's just funny to see like the photos of FNS holding the trophy, and he looks exactly like he does in every other moment of his life. Just
I will
that
say-
one half smirk of
Yeah.
This does give a little bit of credence. So I, amongst others, were very like put off by Chet's interview after day one and how he was like consistently just putting down the other team and acting far more arrogant than he had any right to after a 2-0 defeat. But they
Now
came
he
through and
gets
won
to.
the whole damn thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, fair enough.
talk your shit and back it up. Talk your
There you
shit and back it up. I love it. I want to talk about do we want to talk about the finals a little bit before we get into the other 3 teams that were in the top 4 here? Paul, give me Oh, go ahead.
I
Yeah, no,
I don't have that many hot takes in terms of
Yeah,
gameplay. I think that Optic and Loud both played really fucking well.
Yeah.
I think that was a great grand final. Like most of the you're thinking about last week when I was just roasting G2.
Yeah.
But this week I'm like,
Ooh.
nah. Honestly,
Pretty
I
good.
think all 4 of the top teams played those matches pretty well. I mean, there were some individual rounds, especially like the upper final. There was some weird stuff from Optic on that last map. I think it was nerves getting to him more than anything else. And then they adjusted. They had a much better, despite the fact that Loud got to pick all of the maps in the
Dude,
upper
that was
final,
wild.
right?
That was
Because they get to ban
wild.
2, which I
Yeah.
think is a crazy system that the team coming from upper bracket just bans 2 maps in a best of 5. So they choose all 5 maps. Just the order matters. I think that's crazy. But honestly, like, Optic did their homework. They prepped for Ascent. They rolled that back. They actually crushed Loud on their previously best map, right? And then the next 2 maps were both really close, despite being ones that Optic haven't necessarily shown that they have. Well, I mean, Bind has always been a good map for them. But
Mhm.
Breeze, like, they've never looked good on Breeze, never, not once. And they played Loud super close on it.
Just sandbagging.
My only thing is in the upper bracket final, Optic played like trash. Like I
The
would have
last
been
map leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
No, I'm sorry. They played so badly.
Just
They
gotta-
really did. They fixed it, which is the important part. Credit where it's due. Like the fact that they were able to regroup themselves and they looked a billion times better on the grand final where it actually mattered. Hell yeah, good shit. But in the upper bracket final, it was messy, and I was unsurprised to see that Loud came out on top of that one. I was very sad for the Brazilian crew. I feel like they really did incredibly well, and they kept the series close. My biggest issue with the grand final: are we ever going to have a grand final that goes more than 3 maps?
No.
No. It's
Okay, well,
so
fair
this is a common curse where people talk about it. Like
yeah.
the lower
every
final is
esport.
usually like the most exciting. This
Yeah.
one was also a 3-0. At least they were exciting maps, right? But the traditional
Yeah,
thing is
for
like the semi-final is really the best game, and then the grand final is just a stomp. That's like classic esports thing. Fortunately, I mean, there were banging maps. And
yeah.
honestly, with how brutal best of 5 can be, I would almost rather just have like a banging 3 map series than an actual, we go the
Yeah.
distance best of 5. It's like it just.
I would rather have-
shorter, sweeter.
I would rather
better.
have 3 really close maps
Yeah.
than 5 maps where every single time we load in, somebody's just sweeping the other team.
And we got 2 really good close maps, and then a schwampin.
yeah.
A schwampin
Yeah.
to start.
Right? Like, I'd rather it be 12-14 3 times in a row
Yeah.
than 13-5, 13-5 the other way, 13-5 the other way, 13-5 the other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's very fair. Talking about the other teams, I mean, you kind of already said it, Paul, but Paper X, Zeta Division, Loud, all pretty happy about their performance in general.
I mean, we got to talk about Les, right?
Let's do it.
Les
Oh,
was
dude,
just
man was
insane. Dude, like coming into this tournament for Loud, everybody's talking about, sassy this, sassy that. And then Les shows up,
Les.
drops 30 on Optic on that Icebox map, dude. And and it wasn't just like one insane map. He played pretty much every map really damn well.
Mhm.
Even when Loud were getting kind of slapped on a couple of those maps.
Less is
Les
more.
was super impressive to me.
Mhm.
Every time I saw Loud load into the server, every single map, consistent and good. It's everything you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think some takeaways from the tournament now that it's over. Once again, Riot, Rito, please don't put teams straight through to the playoffs.
Yeah, this format had some like
Not
a couple
great.
glaring
Just
issues.
don't do
like
that.
I like that we got double elim. Give me more double elim. Step in
Hell
the right
yeah.
direction there.
Yeah, that was great.
Let's not do the 2 map ban thing in the finals, and let's not put teams straight through. To
Okay,
the
but like the alternative, what, a 1 map advantage? Is that somehow better?
Yes.
I don't know.
I think
don't agree
if
with
you make
that.
it through the upper bracket undefeated, you deserve a 1 map advantage. Frankly, I mean the actual fair way to do it is to literally, and the way they used to do it before everyone realized this was completely impractical from a scheduling perspective, is you literally have to beat them twice if you're the lower bracket team.
The lower bracket reset. Yeah, exactly.
Because you deserve to get an elimination. If it's double elim, you can get eliminated once if you're the upper team, and then it's the actual grand final. But I think that just doing a map advantage is a good way to do that. To be like, we're not going to run 2 best-of-5s,
We're not
but
doing
also
10
you made it through the upper
maps.
bracket. Like you should absolutely
Exactly.
get a dub straight off the bat. I understand why
don't
Riot
know.
doesn't want to do it because they want to have a full grand final, but I think from a competitive
I mean, can
perspective,
you
they
imagine only
should.
having 2 maps? That would fucking suck.
Well, I mean,
If you're
In
that
this
good.
case, we wouldn't, but like in
But-
almost every other Masters,
I mean, but also in every other, like it wouldn't have mattered much because
Mm-hmm.
the team in every other Masters was just clapping anyways, right?
True.
But that's what I'm saying, because
Um,
then you only have a 2 map final, which is
Just means for
length.
broadcast length. I understand your perspective, and
yeah,
it's
for
why
broadcast
Riot
length,
is doing
sure.
it the way they're doing it because they want to have a minimum 3 map series.
Yeah.
And I get it, but from a competitive standpoint, you deserve some sort of meaty advantage for making it through the upper bracket undefeated.
You think a meaty advantage of getting to basically pick which maps get played is not meaty enough?
No, I think that's meaty, but I think personally I prefer the 1 map advantage.
Eh,
Personally.
I don't mind it too
We
much.
can split hairs on this all day.
Yeah, this is just bracket argument, which people have gone through for a million years. But let's talk about what this means for the Val ecosystem going forward, because I think this is, from Riot's perspective, ideal, right? Zeta Division was trending at the top of Twitter in Japan. Like Paper Rex
Trending
went ham.
globally pretty high too.
Yeah, trending
Yeah.
globally. Like, this is hype for regions for Zeta, a region that has not traditionally had the TAC FPS scene that other regions have had. So this is potentially huge for the game in Japan.
Yeah.
Massive.
Zeta
for
was
them.
so impressive. Zeta
They
were,
really were. Oh, man.
undoubtedly the most improved team at this tournament, right?
100%, yeah.
I mean, if you go back and you watched their final in their region versus Crazy Raccoon, it's a mess. It is
Yeah.
a cluster buff. It is wild how that map was, like how that series was played. And Zeta still won it pretty comfortably, but like comparing that to like their game versus Paper Rex or versus Optic even, right? That 13 or that 15-13 where they lost, like it is night and day difference.
Yeah. Sam, any thoughts before we wrap up on Masters?
No, you know what? Just in terms of the ecosystem, I'm really happy that we're seeing so much talent across the board. This is one of the only truly global esports. And I know that like at the start of the year, things always look different to what they do at the end of the year, but I'm hoping that we kind of get some consistency there in that and keep it as competitive as possible. I know that I like float the EMEA boat, and a lot of that has to do with being the only EMEA voice on this podcast, but more than anything else, I just like good Valorant. And I find that
Honestly.
if 2 regions are consistently dominating the top of the scene, it is boring and I don't want to watch.
Yeah.
So this is good. This was a really, really solid Masters.
It was really cool.
My only curiosity is it's for a lot of Masters, right? Not every team at Masters, but a lot of Masters, we're kind of getting the same teams from each region a lot of the time, right? Like, Fnatic's been there a couple times. Loud, most of those players have been the representative for Brazil, like, even though they haven't been on the team Loud because that's new to this year. Zeta Division, same thing with them. Paper Rex have shown up a couple times. Optic, Liquid, right? So, like, I'm waiting to see not just, like, the best representatives from every region, like, all can play really close together.
Yeah.
But then for that to sort of bleed into the rest of the outlying regions.
Well, here's going to be one of the things, right? It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where the teams that get
Sure.
to international competition and do the best at international
Yeah,
competition
exactly.
then garner the most investment and support, and then have the best setting to then be good going
Mhm.
forward, right? They're getting the best salaries, they're getting the best facilities, the best prac, the best travel, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So they're naturally going to have that competitive advantage. It's why underdog teams
Very
are
true.
so impressive when they manage to make it through. It's why things like the Guard coming out of nowhere was exciting. As opposed to it being Sentinels or Cloud9 or,
Right.
whoever else. But in a scene like let's say Paper Rex, right? Paper Rex are undoubtedly getting more investment than almost all of their competitors, if not all of them, right? So those guys are able to commit and devote more time. They're able to, practice, get coaching staff, that kind of thing, because they're giving that return on investment in terms of credibility, notoriety, brand exposure. So it is one of those things where once you get there, it's so much easier to stay there and keep getting there because you have the eyes on you, you have the attention, you have the focus, you have the money.
Totally fair.
And it does take a special team to sort of unseat the crown. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that shakes up as time goes on and as presumably investment broadens within individual scenes, if you're hoping that that's going to happen. But it's an exciting time, and I think this was a really exciting start to the year.
This is a great
Valorant.
first international tournament, man.
Oh yeah, for the year, yeah.
But we'll keep moving on here.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
We got one more big thing to talk about. Fade. Let's talk about Fade. She's the new operator, new agent, new character, and she does what the leak said she did, which looked really damn OP, and it still looks really damn OP to my eyes. So Sova in the mud, Fade in every comp. Fade OP. Cody still got the hots for her. Putting Cody
Same,
on
to be
blast
honest.
here. And apparently you all do. But the trailer was hype.
How do you not?
I don't know,
Like
man.
seriously. I don't know. Mike's not
You're-
edgy.
You're the outlier
I'm just
here,
here
Mike.
for Brimmy with the stimmy, man. I'm here
That's
for Brimmy.
true.
But yeah, no, it's pretty spicy. How do we feel about Fade?
After watching some of her gameplay, I don't think that she's as terrifying as we initially thought. I will say that like some of the lineups for her Haunt, which is this ability here, are nasty. Like I was watching Jonas busy trying to figure out, because you know what Jonas is like. And so he's busy testing out lineups literally on day one, and some of them are terrifying. Like there are some that you can land on a Scent A site that will see into tree and the entirety of the site. It's like on those like cannons on the wall on top. It's insane how much vision she's going to have. Like this nerf to the owl like if people thought the owl drone was hectic, but obviously I mean you have to get those pixel perfect, you have to get the right timing on it. You're not going to be allowed to do that perfectly. Plus you can actually destroy it before it pops. So I mean as soon as somebody sees it, they can just shoot it, unlike with the drone. Obviously yeah, you can shoot it, but if it spotted you, well, GG's. In terms of this ability here, this like tether thing, that's a little scary for me.
The
Like,
tether's wild, dude.
Oh, it's
you
so
can
OP.
completely deny a retake with that. Like if you're busy, if you've got like the spike halfway and you know someone's coming through tree, for example, you toss one of the tethers out there so that they can't get line of sight on you. You just defuse.
I'm waiting for the Raze, Fade, Astra, Neon, Killjoy comps, where you have
That's
Gravity
gonna be
Well
nasty.
and Tether to keep them in Raze nades and a bunch of mollies, right? Post plants too, right? Like
Tether
plant.
showstopper,
Somebody-
man.
So, Tether showstopper. Somebody taps the spike, you tether them into whatever like post plant utility is coming their way. Shock darts, whatever kind of damage you have to
KJ
chuck at
Molly's,
range.
yeah.
KJ Molly's. Exactly. I think the tether is. I said it before when Astra came out last year. In a game like Valorant, where the time is really low to kill, any ability that dictates the position of your opponents is really hard to tune properly because it is either completely oppressive or absolutely worthless because it doesn't do enough.
It's
right?
also her ult deafens you, right?
Her ult deafens you. You can't hear the spike.
That's
Like,
wild.
when you're trying to defuse it as a defender, I mean, it's like an Astra wall. If you get really close, if you're sitting on the spike, right?
But I mean,
then you can kind of hear.
To me, it's like footsteps are more interesting as well, right?
Footsteps too.
You're going to be able to deny. It's going to be great for fakes and entries, right? Because if you trigger that ability, no one on site accurately knows how many players there are. They can't hear footsteps, they can't hear abilities, they can't hear stuff like that until they see you. So that's huge for
the
fake
other
pulse.
interesting thing. So I thought that this, it's not quite as bad as like paranoia, but if you hit someone with your ultimate, they get a trail. So you can throw out one of the prowlers.
prowler.
If the prowler hits, then they are paranoid.
Yeah, and I mean, you just see where they are. You know where they are if they've got a
And
trail.
the prowlers,
Scary
get
combos.
a boost too when they go
Oh,
on
yeah,
those
and
trails,
Cody
right? Like a
reminds
speed
us
boost, and
that
they go automatic.
The tether and the ult also give you decay on top of everything else that goes on.
I didn't even know that the tether
I'd
decayed
forgotten
you.
about
dude.
that.
I knew
Yeah,
the
it
ult
is a
decayed you. I
decay.
did not know the
so
tether did.
bonkers. She's so
She's just
broken.
it's
She
nutty.
just has too much in her kit. right?
Yes.
Like, and we haven't even talked about the prowlers, which are just like
The prowlers
you get
are great.
2/3 of a sky ult every
Yeah, I mean,
round.
that's the thing, right? This is the problem with ability creep in games. She's just got the
Yeah.
kits of like 3 different characters
but
in
the
one.
thing about the prowlers, you
Like, they're
can't
not
see
as
through
strong.
it. So it's not like a trailblazer where you get to run with it and
No,
you can
it's a
see what's
seeker.
going on. And you kind of control it like a seeker. But if you don't actually hit someone, it just kind of like
you
runs
need
into
a
a wall and
trail
does
for
nothing.
it to actually be a seeker.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Exactly.
you have to like slowly
Like,
control
if you're just-
it, and
yeah,
like
if
it's
you're
more
just
like a
using
sky
it with-
flash in terms of control. But
Okay.
still.
Yeah, but the thing is, with a sky flash, you can just pop it in the middle of nowhere, and if there's someone there, they'll get blinded. Whereas with this,
Yeah.
if you don't know where someone is and direct it to them because the range on attachment is really small, then it's just going to be a cat running into a wall. Like, it's going to be useless.
If you do know where it is, where somebody is, though, which
Yeah,
is
then
not
it's
hard to
pretty
do because
powerful.
you're playing Fade and you have the haunt thing. If they're playing close to a corner, Prowler can absolutely turn the corner and hit them before they have any idea what's going on, right? I've been watching a bunch of the people playing on whatever it is, the PBE or whatever. And like, if you can get close to a corner without them knowing you're there, and you know they're in that position, and you can use the Prowler on them, it becomes the easiest swing of your life.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
Prowler, corner, pop, shoot, you're dead.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yep.
Before they can even react.
Oh, it'll be really interesting to see what the first nerf to this character
Can't wait
is.
to cast this.
Because that's the thing is the first nerf going to come in before she goes live in VCT?
No.
You don't think so? You
Doubtful.
think this version goes live in VCT in 2 weeks?
2 weeks?
I think yeah. And they're going to want to see how it plays and if it really is as busted. Although, to be fair, a lot of teams are generally quite nervous to play a new agent. I mean, Neon, how long did it take before we actually saw
Yeah, but
more
that's
consistent Neon in pro play?
it depends
the
on
difference
how
is
niche the
the-
application is.
And because like your main substitute for Fade is getting nerfed, right? Like Jet and
Yeah.
Raze were still really good
Yeah.
options for your entry, right? It's not like anything happened to Jet and Raze as Neon got introduced. Whereas for your substitute for Fade is often going to be either Sky, who isn't seeing that much play right now anyways. Like she's seeing some on certain maps like Haven, or Sova, and Sova is getting a massive nerf. So I think a lot of
Yeah.
teams are going to try her, and there's not a very high like skill barrier to Fade either, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't have to perfect her movement or her the angles on her abilities to get base level value out of her. So I think we're definitely going to see Fade on launch.
I also feel like the steeper the barrier of like figuring out how to use an agent is when you see
Exactly.
the slower. Like Chamber got used pretty quick, right? Because Chamber is
Yeah.
point click very
Whereas
good.
Astra took a minute.
Astra
Yeah.
took a minute as players had to realize why she was so potent and why she was so effective. And it just depends on how immediately impactful that kid is. And I think that
Exactly.
Fade is immediately impactful enough that everyone's going to be like, we got to use her. Like she represents a major competitive advantage if you're not, if you're using her as opposed to not. That'll be really interesting. It'll be really interesting to see when she hits play, when she comes on in.
For sure.
A couple more things to touch on here before we scoot our way on out of this episode. Game Changers EMEA is going on. Sam, how you feeling about Game Changers
I'm
EMEA?
super excited. So some of the games were streamed with the caster streams. Okay, they basically just followed G2 and Guild.
Mhm.
Fair enough, I suppose. They were the top 2 teams in the last one. But the open quals are now over. We had 91 teams sign up. It has now been whittled down. And this, as you see, is the bracket now. It's a bit of a weird one because obviously we had to use a Swiss system. And unfortunately, that has like the top 5 teams on the same side of the bracket, but it is double elimination. So there is at least a chance here to stay in it. I don't love that they're on the same side of the bracket, but I suppose you pick your poison. You either have a 91 team bracket and a Swiss format, or you have a 32 team bracket and more than half your player base don't get to compete at all. But then you know, it slightly fixes your bracket, I guess. I don't know. Devil's advocate. It's tough either way. But I'm really excited. We're kicking things off this weekend. We've kicked it off this week. So it's going to be nice to see how these teams perform. And I'm looking forward to some of the shakeups. You know, we spoke a little bit about how G2, or rather Guild, have picked up Anya, and she has already like made huge waves there. G2 also recently picked up Glance, and that has been a massive level up for them as well. 10-star haven't made any changes, so I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. This is going to be a pretty exciting game changers.
It should be.
Yes.
Let's talk about who's your one team to watch. Who do you think's going to win it, and then who do you think's going to surprise expectations? Give me 2.
Okay. Win it, I think Guild.
Okay.
With Emil coaching them, I think that they are going to be able to level up massively. Team to watch, that's actually a tough one. I think Footballers did exceptionally well in the Swiss stage.
Okay.
So I think if there's going to be a team to watch, and they were playing Phoenix. And it worked. They actually won that match, and I think it was against Guild. They beat Guild with a Phoenix on Ascent. So, yeah, if you want to go check out a team to watch, probably going to be Footballist.
All right, so G2 goes in the mud, getting dethroned.
Not in the mud. Definitely not in the mud. But
no, you heard it here first. Sam definitely thinks that they're getting eliminated
Downfall of
first
G2 goes,
round.
and Sam thinks they're
yeah.
gonna get
First
wrecked.
round, 100%.
All right, well, that should be spicy. And then one more thing to talk about. Obviously, the NSG tournaments are going on. There's an NSG Open going on this week, and this guy over on the end is casting that. So, Paul,
Hey.
Well, I casted yesterday.
you casted yesterday. That's good enough. Paul,
I
how's
think
the
it's,
NSG Open
what,
going?
It's like Tanner and Phi today. I was actually pretty interested.
I feel like hold on 1 second. Cody, did you just like spatchcock this bracket? It's like it's just been
What is
Did
with
he
you with
what
the
it?
spatchcock chickens?
interesting display.
What is
I
it
mean,
with you?
how would you describe that other than being spatchcock? It's an accurate
I've
metaphor.
never
for
heard
this
that word in my
situation.
life.
It's
Okay,
when
you
it's
clearly
when you
haven't been on
roast
the
a
podcast
chicken,
long
but you
enough.
split it down the sternum and like lay it out flat so it cooks faster. It's delicious. It's a really
Yes.
good method. But anyways, I like this display. Back to you, Paul, for the actual relevant conversation.
Yeah. Anyways, the relevant conversation is I'm actually super excited by all 4 of the teams in the top 4. EG, obviously, we talked a little bit about them earlier. They've got their new additions. Common Apot looks so good, dude.
Yeah.
They look so good. They saved EG's bacon in so many rounds, man. Com's breach. Like, Com has always had a pretty good breach. Oh my word, his breach was massive yesterday when they were playing on Haven when we saw them on stream. I was floored by how good his breach was. And then Apoth lines into this roster really well. I think it gives players like Jogamo and Boostio more support. I think they do a better job of kind of enabling the quote-unquote top fraggers of this team than the old EG lineup did, which is why I'm like, I can't say I'm excited for this EG lineup because EG has been so disappointing for so long, but I'm more excited for EG than I have been, right?
Okay. You were saying about how Boostio being the IGL explains so
Yes,
much.
yeah,
I'm
you gotta
waiting
tell
to
us
hear
about
what
that.
it explains.
Well, so I'm wondering how long he's been the IGL because EG have had this habit, which isn't gone, where Boostio kind of just like goes on his own. And like some rounds he'll get a 3K and totally win the round, and some rounds he'll get clapped and then EG fall apart, right?
Oof.
Like that's been a habit they've had for a really long time. And I saw it. Admittedly, yesterday when I casted them, it happened less, especially since Boostio has now moved fully onto the Sentinel role. He's not like him and Jogamo aren't like splitting time on Jet anymore. Like when they went to Ascent, it was Jogamo, Jet, and Boostio was playing Killjoy. And some of Boostio's lurks have actually looked really good. He had a massive 3K that like flipped an anti-eco yesterday. So I think that this is a really interesting style and adjustment for EG. And I think there is a potentially decently high ceiling for it. I'm just, again, like I said earlier, I'm nervous about them, how quickly they can get toward that ceiling and actually like potentially qualify for VCT.
Good save there, Paul. Good save there, Paul, because Boostio mom's in chat.
Yeah, shout out.
Oh,
Boostio's
Boostio mom! Wholesome as hell.
Good.
Wholesome as
Yeah,
hell.
one of
I
the
love
best
Boostio
esports mom, I swear. She's
honestly.
great.
Good
Well,
save
Back
there.
in like the old
Boostio-
Overwatch days, she was always there.
Right? I've been casting Boostio since Boostio's
Same,
always been
yeah.
like a really cracked shot.
All right,
I'm
you
just
can
waiting
stop
for
sucking
EG
up
to-
now. You can stop sucking. You said
I'm
you're nice
not
about
sucking up.
Boostio.
I said it yesterday on
Move on.
class.
Move on.
I said it yesterday. I'm being consistent, Mike. They have issues and they have benefits.
Consistent
I've stated
soup.
both.
Sip.
I will
Soup.
suck up about Lenny time though, just because there's
Okay.
one player on that team I really like.
Okay.
Dip, who plays in collegiate. He's like one of the best collegiate jets. The dude is a friggin' madman with a sheriff in his hand and an op and a rifle and everything. Super underrated
So a
player in
gun.
my opinion. So I'm really excited to see EG versus Lenny time. I hope that's what's covered on stream. I actually have no idea what match they're doing on stream first. But Dip is great, and the rest of that team has been looking pretty good as well. Then on the other side of things, I mean, Oxygen Academy, that was a team we actually Sam brought up a little bit earlier. Redux and Verdi just popped off, dude. Just absolutely popped off. Redux had like a cracked neon play, and Verdi like nearly dropped 30 on Haven. That's all I really have to say about them.
Okay. I think that just about wraps up our show. One more thing to mention. There's a great article on nerdstreet.com, 7 things we learned from Valorant Masters Reykjavik. That's a nice little wrap up if you want to have some of Brian's conclusions coming from that. So that's worth a read. So definitely go check that out at nerdstreet.com. Obviously, the rest of the Open plays out tonight. That starts at 6 Eastern. So in 4 hours. So definitely tune into that. As we said, the EG team's going to be really interesting to watch. You know, we're big Com fanboys in this household, and apparently Boostio fanboys as well. So we're gonna have to be watching that and see how the team does. Watch Game Changers this weekend. That's this weekend, right? I haven't gone crazy.
I believe so, yeah.
And also VCT this weekend. There's a lot of Valorant going on.
There's
a lot of Valorant going
dude.
on.
So much
The
Valorant,
calendar
dude.
never ends. Masters is over. Now it's time for more. It's time for more. Thank you so much for tuning
Love
in,
it.
everybody. A pleasure as always. We'll see you next week for more Press 4 to Defuse. Until then, bye-bye now.